Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Tonight, we're going far, far back, before the carols, before the tree, before the idea of Christmas had a name at all. Long before bells and choirs, there were fires, and around those fires were people very much like us. Cold, tired, and hoping that the sun would rise again. So find somewhere comfortable, pull a blanket around your shoulders, breathe slowly, let the sound of the fire steady your heart. We're going back to the beginning of winter itself. Picture it, the world thousands of years ago. No electric lights, no cities glowing at night, only the stars and the moon and the endless black between them. Each year, as the days grew shorter, people felt the sun slip away. Every evening arrived a little earlier. Every morning rose a little colder, and they wondered, what if the sun never comes back? What if this darkness is forever? They watched the sky like a heartbeat. When the sun stood still on the horizon, they called it the solstice, the longest night, the moment when light seemed to die and be born again. Across the world, every culture created rituals to answer the same fear. In Europe and Scandinavia, great bonfires. In Egypt, lamps burning through the night for Ra, the sun god. In Persia, the festival of Mithras, the unconquered sun. In Rome, candles for Saturnalia. Different names, different languages, but one instinct, to push back the dark. Humans could live without many things, but not without light. Light meant warmth. Warmth meant life. Even today, when you light a candle on a winter night, some ancient part of you remembers that fear and that hope. Imagine a village 5,000 years ago, snow whirling beyond the walls of mud and timber. Inside, the fire glows red and gold, reflected in dozens of eyes, children half asleep on straw beds, elders murmuring stories of how the sun once vanished for good and how heroes brought it back. Someone throws herbs onto the flames, the air fills with sweet smoke and memory. Someone else chants words that no one quite understands anymore, half song, half prayer. The fire crackles, a soft pulse beneath every heartbeat. This is not religion yet. It is survival wrapped in meaning. Step outside for a moment in your mind. Feel the wind bite your face. See your breath rise like ghosts in the night. Above you, a black sky frozen with stars. From somewhere deep in the forest, a wolf calls. Then, silence. Only the distant glow of firelight from the village, a tiny spark against endless dark. That spark is humanity itself, every flame a declaration that life will not give up. Return to the warmth of the fire. Listen to its steady voice. It tells you the same thing it told them. The sun will come back. Over time, those fires became more than heat. They became symbols. People began to mark the night with offerings and grain, wine, carved wood, tiny figures of animals. They believed each flame carried their wishes to the sky. Communities learned that lighting fires together created something greater than fear. It created belonging. Each year, as the darkness grew, they lit them again, to remember, to celebrate, to hope. This was the world's first holiday season, not a day of faith, but a cycle of gratitude for survival. And from those fires came stories that would shape civilizations. In Rome, they would become Saturnalia. In the north, Yule. In Persia, the birth of Mithras. In Bethlehem, eventually Christmas itself. But at their heart, they were all the same act. Humans gathering in the dark, promising each other that light would return. And that's where our journey begins tonight, with those first fires burning against the cold. Now, as the wind outside softens and your eyes begin to close, we move toward Rome, where a god named Saturn waits to turn the world upside down. Outside the ancient fires of early winter, the world waits. The air is so cold it seems to ring. Stars hang heavy above the frozen horizon. Somewhere far away an ember glows in a clay hearth, a heartbeat against the void. You can feel the world holding its breath, waiting. This is the longest night. Thousands of years ago, before maps, before kings, before the word holiday even existed, there was this fear that the sun might not return. The people of the old world watched the sky like a living clock. Each day the sunrise crept lower, later. Each sunset devoured more light. The shadows came sooner. The animals slept longer. The world dimmed and dimmed and dimmed. Imagine living then, with no guarantee that the morning would ever come again. Darkness was not just the absence of light. It was a presence, a vast living thing pressing against the walls of your home, whispering through cracks, waiting for fires to die. And so people fought it with the only weapon they had, flame. They learned to measure the sun's journey. Stone circles, monuments like Stonehenge and Newgrange, were built as enormous calendars. On the longest night, the first rays of dawn would pierce stone corridors and flood ancient chambers with gold. This was the first mathematics of hope. Each solstice they waited to see if the beam of sunlight would return. When it did, cheers rose from the crowds. People danced, cried, offered food and wine to the sky. The sun had been reborn. And so began the first holiday of humankind, a celebration of survival. In every village, from the frozen north to the warm deserts, families gathered around fires through the solstice. In Britain they burned oak. In the Middle East, lamps of oil. In the East, incense and paper offerings. Everywhere, the light meant the same thing. We are still here. People threw dried herbs, animal bones, and symbols of the old year into the fire, letting the smoke carry their fears away. Some painted their faces with ash, a reminder that all things must die so that the sun can live again. If you listen closely, you can almost hear them. The quiet chant of thousands of years past, voices calling the sun home. Now imagine, the fire burns low, the last logs smoulder, the wind outside howls through the bare branches. A mother pulls her children closer, an elder stares into the coals and whispers a story. That once, long ago, the sun did disappear for 100 years, until people lit 1,000,000 fires to bring it back. It's only a story, but on nights like this, stories are the only warmth left. When sleep finally comes, it is uneasy, because every dream is dark, and yet, each dawn after the solstice, the light returns a few seconds earlier, hardly noticeable at first, but enough to fill every heart with quiet relief. The world has survived again. When the sun finally begins to climb, the people gather. They sing. They feast on whatever they managed to save. Salted meat, stored grain, wine from clay jars. Laughter replaces fear. Children dance around the ashes of the great bonfire. The old ones tell stories of how the flames held back the dark. This celebration, this relief, would echo across continents and millennia. It would become Saturnalia in Rome, Yule in the north, the Sol Invictus festival in the east. Different names, same heartbeat, a feast to mark the moment light returns. Even without religion, people understood something sacred was happening. Every fire was a womb of light, every sunrise a resurrection. They decorated caves and temples with symbols of circles. because circles have no end. They painted spirals, wheels, and suns rising over hills. The message was simple: what dies will live again. When Christianity later spoke of resurrection, the world already knew the story, because it was written in the sky every winter. And so, the longest night ends. The sky begins to pale. Birds cry from the treetops. Somewhere, someone breathes out in relief. The solstice fires will fade into ash, but their meaning never will. Before calendars, before kings, before churches or holidays, there was this moment. Humans gathered against the dark, believing together that light would return, and it always did. Next, we travel to Rome, where the fires of the solstice become a carnival of laughter and light, where the god Saturn rules the season of chaos, and Christmas begins to take shape in disguise. The fires of the solstice still burn, but their glow now falls upon marble streets. The scene has changed. The forests of the north have given way to the heart of the ancient world, Rome. The year is near its end. The days are short, the nights long, and the city hums with restless energy. Something is about to begin. Something wild. In the chill of December, the Romans waited for 1 week every year when the world turned upside down. It was called Saturnalia, the feast of the god Saturn, the old father of time, the bringer of harvests, the symbol of the golden age. When the festival arrived, Rome let go of all its rules. No business, no war, no politics. The courts closed, the schools emptied, and laughter spilled through the alleys like wine. Everywhere green garlands twined round columns and doors. Candles flickered in every window, their flames little suns proclaiming that darkness had not won. Children ran through the streets tossing nuts like coins. Vendors called out, their stalls bright with ribbons, sweets and figs soaked in honey. The city smelled of spice, smoke and pine. In the spirit of Saturn, freedom ruled. Masters and slaves exchanged clothes for a day. The wealthy served food to the poor. Even the senators joined the chaos, wearing bright felt caps instead of their formal togas. At feasts, the slaves reclined at the tables while their masters stood to pour the wine. Mock kings were chosen by dice rolls. Whoever threw the lucky number became king of misrule for the night, giving ridiculous orders everyone obeyed. One ancient poet wrote, "Now is no day for business, but for merriment. Even the poorest man may be a king." Imagine the sound. Hundreds of houses bursting with laughter, music from lyres and flutes echoing down the narrow streets, torches blazing through the dark Roman winter. At the heart of Saturnalia were the banquets. Tables overflowed with roasted boar, olives, cheese, bread and wine as red as sunset. Friends greeted one another with the words, "Io Saturnalia," Hail Saturn. They toasted to liberty, to peace, and to the turning of the year. Candles were lit in honour of Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun. They believed that with each flame, light itself grew stronger, and when the city finally slept, its glow could be seen for miles beyond the walls, a sea of tiny fires mirroring the stars above. Romans loved to exchange small gifts, figurines of clay, wax candles, and little tokens called sigillaria. Each gift carried meaning: light, fertility, good fortune, or protection from evil spirits. Children received dolls and sweets. Neighbours shared wreaths of evergreen, a promise that life endures through the cold. Even lovers traded messages written on scraps of papyrus, tied with red thread. In every home, someone whispered that the fires of Saturn would keep them safe until spring. For one sacred week, everything was equal. There were no ranks, no titles, no judgment. It was said that during Saturn's ancient reign, all men were free, and Saturnalia was a return to that dream. In those nights of wine and song, people remembered what it felt like to be human before duty and hierarchy ruled. They danced in the streets, played games of chance, sang verses both beautiful and foolish. Dice rolled across every tavern table. Cheers rose and fell like waves. And above it all, the temples glowed. Priests offered garlands and burned incense before Saturn's statue, whose feet were usually bound with woolen cords. During the festival, those cords were cut, the god himself set free if only for a moment. What made Saturnalia endure was not excess. It was release, the freedom to laugh, to rest, to forgive, the knowledge that even the most powerful must one day serve, and even the poorest must one day feast. For 7 days Rome remembered the warmth of equality, a memory older than empire, older than law. When dawn came each morning, the fires burned lower, but hearts felt lighter. They had made it through the darkest part of the year together. Centuries later, as Christianity spread across the empire, the church could not erase Saturnalia. Its joy ran too deep. So instead, it absorbed it. The birthday of Christ was placed near the old feast of Saturn. The candles of Saturnalia became the lights of Christmas, the gift-giving, the greenery, the laughter. All were reborn with new meaning. The Romans who had once cried Io Saturnalia would soon sing Gloria in excelsis Deo. Different words, same spirit. Light conquering darkness, joy after endurance, love after fear. As the week faded, the chaos quieted. Slaves returned to their duties, senators to their marble halls, merchants to their stalls. But something lingered, a softness in the air, a memory of laughter echoing through the forum. The last candles guttered, leaving tiny curls of smoke that smelled of honey and pine, ashes scattered on the stones like grey snow. In those ashes was a promise. The world can begin again. The laughter of Rome fades. The marble streets fall silent. Ahead lies a darker land, a world of snow-laden pines, of wolves and stars and long winter nights. We are travelling north, to the lands of the Germanic and Norse tribes, where winter lasts for months and where fire means survival. Picture the scene. A frozen valley beneath a sky of swirling green lights. Smoke rises from timber halls roofed with snow. The air smells of pine, resin, and wood smoke. A faint orange glow leaks from carved doorways, and inside those walls, the people wait for Yule to begin. For them, this is not just celebration, it is rebirth. The sun has turned, each day will soon grow longer. But first, they must honour the darkness one last time. Step inside the great longhouse. The door shuts against the wind with a heavy thud. Inside, the air is thick with warmth and the smell of roasting meat. Torches flicker along the walls, their light shimmering over shields, drinking horns, and the carved faces of ancestors watching from the beams. Children chase each other around benches. Old women lay out bread and cheese. Men drag in fresh logs to feed the fire that will not go out for 12 nights. At the far end, on a raised dais, the chieftain lifts a carved horn filled with mead. He calls to Odin, to Freya, to the spirits of those who came before. The hall echoes with a single word. Skål! The feast of Yule has begun. For 12 nights the fires will burn. Each flame is a prayer, for strength, for good harvest, for safe return of the sun. The people believe that during Yule, the veil between worlds grows thin. The spirits of ancestors return to visit their kin, and the gods themselves ride across the stormy sky in the wild hunt. A ghostly procession led by Odin, his wolves leaping through clouds, his horse galloping faster than the wind. Children are told to leave food by the hearth for Odin's beasts so that he may bless the household. In time, this story will become something gentler, a man who rides the winter sky bringing gifts. But tonight, it is still a tale of awe and fire. At the centre of every hall stands the Yule log, a massive oak trunk chosen months before, dried and decorated with runes and pine. It is set alight with a spark from the previous year's ember, a promise that the flame never truly dies. Families take turns feeding it, for if the fire goes out before the 12th night, bad luck will shadow the year to come. Sparks rise toward the rafters, tiny stars echoing the sky beyond the roof. The fire consumes the old wood slowly, steadily, and with each crack of ember stories are told. Tales of heroes, monsters, and gods who also fight against the dark. As the night deepens, the hall fills with song. Voices chant ancient verses that rhyme with the rhythm of the fire. The storyteller, the skald, stands beside the hearth, his face half lit, half shadowed. He begins to speak of Baldur, the sun god slain by mistletoe, and of his mother Frigg, who wept until the world promised never again to let darkness conquer light. Every story ends the same way, death followed by renewal. It is the pattern of winter and spring, of Yule and the new year, of life itself. The children drift to sleep where they sit. The adults keep drinking, softer now, their voices blending into the hum of the flames. When the fires grow low, women hang evergreen boughs along the beams. Fir, holly, ivy, symbols of endurance. Their green colour whispers of spring even in the heart of snow. Some tie small bones or berries to the branches as charms. Others carve wooden suns to hang near the fire. The house becomes a small forest of hope. Outside, the snow keeps falling, burying footprints, softening the world into silence. In the oldest times, Yule carried offerings too. A cup of mead poured into the earth for the land spirits. The first slice of bread set aside for the gods. Not fear, but gratitude. The understanding that survival depends on balance. Even the animals shared in the feast. Dogs gnawed bones, cattle were given handfuls of grain. The entire household, human and beast alike, joined in the circle of warmth. When you think of Christmas dinners today, of food shared between family and friends, you're seeing the shadow of Yule's long tables. Yule was not about splendour, it was about togetherness. Outside, the world was frozen. Inside, every soul mattered. Neighbours who had quarrelled shared drink again. Travellers were offered a place by the fire. Lonely wanderers could knock on any door and be welcomed in the spirit of the season. Because in the north, survival itself depended on generosity. A single night of cruelty could mean death. So they turned kindness into ritual, and ritual into tradition, and tradition into memory. Centuries later, when Christianity reached these lands, the missionaries saw the power of this season. They did not forbid it, they baptized it. The Yule log became Christ's light. The evergreen became the tree of eternal life. The feast became Christmas dinner. The songs became carols. But beneath the new names, the old meanings lived on. Every candle still carried a whisper of the old fires. Every gift a shadow of the first offerings to the gods. Even the word Yule survived, hidden in languages, echoing each December when people speak of joy. On the 12th night the fire burns low and red, and the people gather one last time. They speak of the year gone by, of births, losses, and hopes for the spring. They toast those who are gone and those yet to come. The final log breaks into embers. Someone collects a glowing coal to keep safe until next Yule. It will light the fire again, a circle without end. Outside, dawn begins to stain the snow pink and gold. The sun has returned. The people step outside into the cold light, faces warmed by the first real sunrise in months. They have kept the promise. The fire still burns. The longhouses fall quiet. Smoke rises in thin blue ribbons above the roofs. The great feast of Yule is over, but its warmth will travel south again, carried in legend, in song, and in memory. And as the years pass, that warmth will find a new home in cathedrals and cottages, in trees hung with light, in hearts that still seek comfort in winter. Now the story drifts onward, from the frozen north to the green heart of Europe, where candles and evergreens merge into something universal, a season not only of gods and rituals but of light reborn. The fires of Yule have dimmed to embers. The air smells of pine and smoke, and frost clings to every branch outside. But within the stillness, something new begins to stir. Not a feast or a song, but a feeling. The quiet return of colour to a grey world. This is the chapter of green and light, the part of winter that teaches us to look for life where none should remain. In every ancient land, the people noticed one miracle in winter. When every other tree stood bare and black, the evergreen refused to die. The pine, the fir, the holly. They stayed alive through snow and darkness, their needles whispering even under heavy frost. To the pagans of the north, these trees were sacred. They were proof that life could survive the cold. They became the guardians of hope. Families hung branches of pine and holly above doorways. They believed the spirits of winter would pass by houses marked with green. In those leaves, they saw strength. In the scent of resin, renewal. Long before the first Christmas tree, people already kept evergreens close to their hearths, not as decoration, but as protection. As centuries passed, the tree became a symbol not only of survival, but of the world itself. Roots deep in the dark earth, branches reaching toward the light. In Norse myth, it was Yggdrasil, the great world tree. In Celtic belief, the oak stood as the doorway between life and death. And in the Christian world that would follow, that symbol remained. A single tree standing in the centre of creation, linking heaven and earth. When, in later centuries, Germans began to bring trees indoors at Christmas time, they were not inventing something new. They were bringing the forest's strength into their homes, honouring the oldest memory of winter, that the green endures. The tree became a pillar of hope, a silent prayer of wood and light. Long before electricity, people lit candles to call back the sun. A single flame could change a room, its golden circle turning fear into calm. In Rome, candles were gifts during Saturnalia, symbols of the reborn sun. In the north, oil lamps burned beside evergreen boughs to invite the light home. As Christianity spread, the candle became something holy, a sign of Christ, the light of the world. But even then, beneath the prayers and hymns, there remained something older, more human, the simple relief of seeing a flame on the darkest night. Each candle flickering on a windowsill, each lantern glowing in the snow, is a message whispered through the centuries. The light returns. Look at the wreath, that circle of branches hung on winter doors. Its shape is eternal. No beginning, no end. It is the wheel of the year, the endless turning of seasons. In pagan villages, wreaths were laid on tables as charms for luck and fertility. Each plant had meaning: holly for protection, ivy for connection between worlds, pine for endurance, berries for blood and life. Later, the wreath would gain candles and ribbons, and people would call it the Advent crown. But beneath the ribbon's red and the candle's glow, the circle's message never changed. Life goes on. Every year the door adorned with green says the same quiet thing: we have survived again. High above the doors and beams hangs another ancient plant, mistletoe. To the Druids it was sacred, a gift from the gods that grew where lightning struck trees. It never touched the ground, and so it belonged to neither earth nor sky. A bridge between the two. In their rituals, Druids cut it with golden sickles and caught it in white cloths, so it would never be defiled by the soil. They hung it in homes for healing and peace, believing it could protect from evil, cure illness, and bring fertility to the barren. When two people stood beneath it, they were blessed by the old magic of harmony, a wish for life to continue. Centuries later, this became the gentle kiss beneath the mistletoe, a spark of warmth in the cold, a memory of the first promise of spring. The holly tree was the king of winter, its red berries shining like blood against snow. The ivy, evergreen and winding, was his queen, soft yet enduring. Their marriage was the balance of all things, male and female, sun and moon, strength and grace. Songs about holly and ivy are not just carols. They are ancient hymns to nature's partnership, echoing the oldest religions of Europe. And so even today, when you see their shapes intertwined on cards or garlands, you are seeing something that began long before Christmas, in the whispers of the forest itself. The ancients did not see colour as we do. They felt it. Green was not just pigment, it was life force. Red was blood, fire and love. Gold was sunlight and divinity. That is why our winter still glows with those hues. They are older than language. Every ribbon, every spark, every berry and candle flame, they are fragments of the same ancient spell, to bring warmth into the world of frost. As centuries passed, the separate customs began to intertwine. Roman candles met Norse evergreens. Celtic mistletoe hung beside Christian icons. And from that tapestry of belief, the Christmas we know today slowly took shape. Not from one religion or empire, but from the shared human longing for renewal. Every culture added its own note to the symphony. The bells of Rome, the pines of the north, the songs of Bethlehem. Together they formed a single season of light. Today we decorate without thinking. We hang wreaths because they are pretty, light candles because they glow softly, and bring trees indoors because tradition says we should. But somewhere deep inside, our oldest instincts still know why. We are recreating the same rituals that our ancestors used to banish fear and welcome life. Every ornament, every spark, every green branch is a quiet offering to the same mystery, that life returns, that warmth follows cold, that light will always rise again. The human heart remembers what the mind forgets. Now imagine a room lit only by candles. The scent of pine and wax fills the air. Outside, snow falls against the window. Inside, there is silence except for soft breathing and the whisper of flame. This is what the ancients sought. Not noise, not wealth, but the reassurance that even in silence life still glows. The world has turned again. The night is long, but not endless. And somewhere, unseen beyond the clouds, the sun begins its slow return. the lights of the season shimmer gently. Each one carries a story. Each one connects us to the people who once waited, just as we wait now, for warmth, for dawn, for the world to bloom again. Our next journey will follow that light as it grows stronger, as it becomes song, celebration, and feast, as humanity learns to welcome joy openly once more. We travel next to the tables, the laughter, the shared voices of winter, to the heart of the feasts and songs that would echo through every century to come. The candles are lit. The evergreens shimmer faintly against stone walls. Outside the snow thickens, but inside there is warmth, laughter, and the soft hum of voices carried through firelight. The time of solemn ritual has passed. Now begins the time of feasting and song. Long before grand dining halls or decorated banquets, the feast began in small circles. A few families huddled together beside the hearth, sharing what little food they had managed to store. Winter was cruel, but the act of eating together turned necessity into celebration. The Celts roasted grain cakes and meat over open fires. The Romans poured wine spiced with cinnamon and honey. The Norse brewed dark mead from honey and berries, passing the same carved horn from hand to hand, a symbol of unity and trust. Each sip was a promise: we will survive this winter together. The food itself was not abundance, but gratitude, the art of turning survival into joy. Every feast followed a rhythm older than memory. The crackle of the fire, the clink of bowls, the rise and fall of voices, and above all, the song. There was always song. Sometimes it was praise to gods of harvest. Sometimes it was laughter, nonsense verses, rhymes children could remember when the world went quiet again. In the dark seasons, song was light. The sound of many voices became its own kind of fire, and so every year, people sang louder as nights grew longer, to keep fear away, to call the sun back, to remind each other they were not alone. In Rome, the feast was an explosion of indulgence. During Saturnalia, wine flowed endlessly. Roasted meats, figs, honey cakes, and bread filled the tables. Laughter shook the marble halls, but beyond excess there was meaning, a release from the burdens of control, a brief return to innocence. Even slaves and masters shared the same table. And when they sang, it was not as rulers or servants, but as equals under the same stars. This idea, the feast as equality, would echo through the centuries, finding its way into every December that followed. Far to the north, in the longhouses of the Norse and Germanic tribes, feasting took on a deeper, almost spiritual tone. The great tables stretched the length of the hall, lit by hundreds of small flames. Plates of salted fish, dried fruit, and roasted boar were passed down the line. Outside, wolves howled in the distance, but inside the people sang to drown out the dark. They toasted to Odin, to Freya, to their ancestors. They called upon luck, health, and peace. Feasting for them was not indulgence, it was worship, an act of communion with the living and the dead. The gods, it was said, listened to the laughter of men, and in return gave them strength for another year. When Europe became Christian, the old feasts did not vanish. They simply changed shape. The church calendar absorbed them, aligning holy days with solstice celebrations. Christmas became a time not of mourning, but of joy and generosity. In medieval villages, people baked bread shaped like suns, carved apples into candles, and shared food with strangers who had none. Manors hosted 12-day feasts, the origins of the 12 days of Christmas, each day marked by song, gift, and prayer. Tables overflowed with roasted goose, sweet puddings, nuts, and wine. Minstrels wandered from house to house, singing carols that were half prayer, half blessing. When they reached a door, they sang, "Good tidings we bring to you and your kin, for warmth and light shall dwell within." The host would open the door, offer bread and ale, and join in the chorus. From these small exchanges grew the tradition of caroling, born from the ancient instinct to share voice and warmth in the dark. To feast was to remember the bounty of the earth, to give thanks for life itself. Each flavour had meaning: salt for preservation, bread for sustenance, wine for joy, meat for strength, and sweets for blessing the children. Even silence at the table was sacred, a moment to honour those who could not join. The sharing of food became a form of storytelling, a living ritual passed through generations. Recipes were not written, they were remembered. Every hearth fire carried the smoke of centuries. Every culture had winter songs. The Celts sang ballads to the rebirth of the sun. The Norse sang sagas of gods and heroes who endured the cold. The Christians sang hymns of divine birth. Different words, one melody. The promise that warmth would return. When you hum a carol today, when you hear voices echoing softly through a snowy street, you're hearing the same instinct that moved those ancient voices, to fill the night with beauty. Singing was not entertainment, it was survival through harmony. Every song was a spell against silence, every chorus a reminder, we are alive together. Winter was also the time of forgiveness. Old debts were repaid, quarrels forgotten, and travellers invited in from the snow. For a few nights every heart softened. Feast tables were open to all. Even the poorest could sit beside the richest, because in the eyes of winter, all were equal. This sense of mercy, this temporary equality, became the emotional foundation of Christmas itself. It was not wealth or faith that saved the season. It was kindness. Imagine the sound, not music in the modern sense, but layers of life, the creak of wood, the soft rumble of laughter, the faint hum of voices blending with firelight. Each home, each hall became a small orchestra of survival. When people sang together, they forgot hunger and fear. They felt something vast and ancient, connection. That feeling would endure through every change in faith or empire. It was the true soul of winter. As the night deepened and the candles burned low, the tables slowly emptied. Plates were cleared, fires reduced to embers. Children slept beneath benches. Elders whispered blessings. One by one, the singers' voices faded until only a few remained, softly humming the same melody that had begun hours before. And when silence finally fell, it was not emptiness, it was peace, the kind that only comes after joy. Today we still gather to eat, drink and sing. Our tables are brighter, our music more polished, but the heartbeat beneath it is the same. Every clink of a glass, every shared laugh, every candle flickering beside a plate is an echo of those first fires. The feast and the song are not relics of the past. They are proof of what makes us human. And as we step into the later centuries of this story, into the merging of sun and spirit, ritual and religion, we carry with us the same truth the ancients knew, that warmth shared is warmth multiplied, that light given is light returned, and that in the darkest nights the human voice is the oldest fire of all. The tables are cleared, the candles burn low, their wax puddled in gold on the wood. The last note of song drifts upward, vanishing into the rafters. Tomorrow the people will wake to another dawn, a little brighter than the one before. The sun has turned, and with it, the world. Now the story turns as well, to the rising of the light itself, to the ancient vision of the unconquered sun, a symbol that would unite pagans, emperors, and Christians alike under a single golden sky. The feasts are over now, the songs fade into memory, smoke curls from quiet hearths, and snow lies heavy on the rooftops. Yet beyond the horizon, something vast begins to stir. The sky itself changes colour, from black to deep blue, from deep blue to gold. The ancients watched this shift with reverence. They saw the first rays of dawn as the triumph of life over death, light over darkness, hope over despair. They called it many names, but to them all it was the same eternal truth, the return of the sun. Before religion had borders or names, the sun was humanity's first god. It rose each morning and vanished each night, just as men were born and died. Its warmth ripened crops, its absence brought famine. Its cycle taught humanity the rhythm of the world. From the deserts of Egypt to the icy plains of the north, the sun was not just a light in the sky. It was the pulse of creation itself. To follow its path was to understand time, death, and resurrection. In ancient Egypt, the sun was both father and child, Ra by day, and Horus, the newborn light, by dawn. Each morning, as the horizon blushed red over the Nile, priests sang hymns to the child god rising from the waters of chaos. They called it the birth of light. It happened every day, but once a year at the winter solstice, it was more than daily magic. It was a cosmic rebirth. The people celebrated the lengthening of days. Temples were aligned so that the first ray of sunrise fell perfectly upon Horus's statue, as if the heavens themselves blessed the child of light. That image of divine birth, of the infant who brings dawn to the world, would travel far beyond Egypt's sands. It would echo, centuries later, in a new faith born in Bethlehem. In the mountains of Persia, another god was born from light, Mithras. His followers gathered in hidden caves, their walls painted with stars. At the centre stood a single flame, the living heart of the universe. They called him the Unconquered One. Each year, as the sun reached its lowest point, they celebrated his victory over darkness. December 25th marked the return of his power, the day when shadows began to retreat. Mithraic rituals were secretive and solemn. Followers shared a sacred meal of bread and wine, symbols of life renewed. They believed that through faith the human soul could share in the sun's immortality. When Rome later adopted the cult of Mithras, his festival became Dies Natalis Solis Invicti, the birthday of the unconquered sun. The empire burned with light, and long after the altars of Mithras were abandoned, that date, December 25th, remained sacred. By the 3rd century, Rome itself crowned the sun as emperor. Under Emperor Aurelian, the worship of Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun, became the official religion of the empire. Temples were built so that their doors faced east, catching the first light of morning. Golden mosaics glittered with rays like spears of fire. Each year, at the darkest time, Romans celebrated the sun's victory. Not through war, but through endurance. They believed that as the sun climbed higher again, so too would humanity. The people feasted, lit torches, and sang to greet the dawn. It was both celebration and prophecy, a promise that light cannot die. As centuries passed, the empires rose and fell, but the worship of light never faded. When Christianity spread through the same lands, it carried with it echoes of the old songs. The new faith spoke of a child born in darkness, whose coming brought light to the world. And so, the festival of Christ's birth merged with the old festival of the sun's rebirth. The God of heaven and the God of the sky became one in human imagination. The date remained, December 25th. The candles remained. The hymns remained. Only the name of the light had changed. For the ancients, light was never only physical. It was moral, spiritual, emotional. To walk in the light meant to live in truth, to see clearly, to love fully. The solstice was not just astronomy, it was philosophy. Each sunrise was proof that despair never has the final word. The pagans knew it, the mystics knew it, and deep down we all still know it. Look inward now as they once did. They believed the human soul was a mirror of the sun, a spark of divine fire trapped within fragile flesh. When they prayed to the sky, they were also speaking to the light inside themselves. To live kindly, to love deeply, to forgive freely. These were ways to keep that inner sun burning. No temple was more sacred than the heart that glowed with compassion. By the 4th century, the Christian Church had made its choice. The birth of Christ would be celebrated on the same day the ancients had always honoured the sun. It was a brilliant harmony of symbols, a merging, not a replacement. The eternal light of Sol Invictus became the divine light of the Saviour. The candles of Saturnalia became the candles of Advent. The evergreen of Yule became the tree of everlasting life. Across thousands of years, from cave to cathedral, the image of the sun endures. We see it in halos painted around saints, in golden stars atop Christmas trees, in the morning light streaming through stained glass. It is not mere decoration. It is memory. It is the world remembering its first God, the light that never surrenders. Each year, when the nights grow long and cold, the story repeats. We light candles, hang stars, and watch the dawn return. We are the inheritors of every solstice fire, every chant to Mithras, every hymn to Horus, every carol to Christ. We do not need to choose between them. They are all fragments of the same truth, that life itself is unconquerable, and when you see the first light of morning after a long winter night, you are seeing what the ancients saw, the universe forgiving itself. So rest now in that light. It does not ask for worship, only for wonder. The sun that rises above deserts and oceans is the same that glows behind your eyelids when you dream. It has no enemy but forgetfulness. It asks only that we remember the warmth, the renewal, the promise. The light always returns. It always has. It always will. The dawn brightens. Snow sparkles like crushed diamonds. The long night of the ancients has ended, but their wisdom remains, flowing quietly into the new world, a world that will shape the holiday we now know. Next, we follow that light as it passes through centuries of change, through churches and empires, through stories and songs, until it becomes the Christmas of our time. Across the ancient world, the rising sun now shines on crosses instead of stone altars, on cathedrals instead of sacred groves. Yet the feeling beneath it all, that soft, holy awe of winter's light returning, remains the same. The story of the season is no longer told in whispers to the gods of wood and sky. It is sung in hymns to a child in a manger. But if you listen closely, you can still hear the echo of the old songs beneath the new ones. In the centuries after Christ's birth, Christianity spread across Europe, meeting every tribe, every tradition, every ancient fire that refused to die. Missionaries found people who still burned Yule logs, who still hung holly and mistletoe, who still lit candles to honour the turning of the year. They did not demand that the people forget. They simply gave new meaning to what they already loved. The Yule log became the light of Christ. The evergreen became the promise of eternal life. The feast became the joy of fellowship. And the winter solstice, the day when light returns, became the day to celebrate the light of the world. What was once the worship of the sun became the worship of the sun. By the 5th century, cathedrals rose where temples once stood, but their builders remembered the sky. Many were designed so that the first rays of dawn on December 25th would shine directly down the nave and strike the altar in golden brilliance. The same architecture of hope. Light entering darkness, the human soul illuminated from above. The faithful gathered to sing hymns that were new in words but ancient in rhythm. Even in silence their candles flickered like stars reborn. While priests preached of Bethlehem, villagers still kept the old customs, hanging ivy, carving wooden suns, and singing through the streets on winter nights. Children carried torches from house to house. Bread and cider were shared with strangers. At every doorway the same blessing was spoken. Peace to this house and all within. For the people, Christmas was not only a holy day. It was a moment when the boundaries blurred between sacred and ordinary, between heaven and hearth. A time when everyone could feel, if only for a night, that they belonged to something greater than themselves. Every detail of Christmas carries an ancient secret. The star above the manger is the sun reborn. The candle in the window is the old solstice fire. The songs that fill the air are the echoes of Saturnalia. The gifts beneath the tree are the remnants of Yule's offerings. And at the centre of it all, a story of love so human it could only have come from the stars. A mother, a child. A night of fear turned to wonder, a world reborn through compassion. For all its history and theology, Christmas is, at its heart, a quiet miracle. That warmth, shared freely, can heal the coldest world. Empires fell, kings rose and faded, the languages changed, the customs drifted, but the fire endured. Even in times of war and plague, people lit candles in their windows. Even when the world seemed lost, they sang carols into the night. Because deep down, we all remember that first long darkness and the relief that came with the first dawn. Today, when cities glow with millions of lights, it is easy to forget what they mean. But every bulb, every spark, is the same ancient symbol renewed. The tree in your home is the forest brought inside. The ornaments shimmer like frozen suns. The songs you hum carry the rhythm of the old chants. Whether you believe in Saturn or Christ, in the gods of fire or the love of heaven, you are part of the same endless story. The human story of light returning after dark. All faiths, all peoples, all ages have told this story in their own way. Different names, different languages. One truth, that even in the coldest season, there is a promise that warmth will return. That even in despair there is renewal waiting quietly, like dawn behind the clouds. That even in the silence of winter there is music beneath the snow. And that every heart, no matter how small, holds a spark of the unconquered sun. Imagine now that the story has come full circle. The first fires of the ancients have burned into embers. The songs of Rome have become hymns. The longhouses of the north have become cathedrals. And through it all, the flame has never gone out. It flickers now beside your own heart, gentle, steady, alive. When you look into the glow of a candle this winter, know that you are seeing every fire that ever was, every hope that kept humanity alive. The ancients would have understood. They too sat beside their fires, telling stories of gods and heroes, of death and rebirth, of the light that never dies. And just like you now, they drifted slowly towards sleep, listening to the hush of winter and the heartbeat of flame. So we end where we began, with darkness and with fire. The darkness teaches us to cherish the light. The light teaches us to endure the dark. It is the oldest lesson the earth has to give, the one that turned fear into ritual, ritual into celebration, and celebration into love. The pagans knew it, the priests knew it, the poets, the farmers, the kings and the children, they all knew. And now so do you. You have journeyed with humankind from the first fires to the candles of Christmas, from fear to faith, from darkness to dawn. Close your eyes, let the light rest within you, and as the world turns once more toward morning, know that the oldest fire still burns. Good night.